Hey folks, Jackdaw here. Baldur's Gate 3 is undoubtedly one of the best role-playing games I've ever had the pleasure of playing. It's literally got everything I desire in an RPG, let alone a video game, with a plethora of choices, impactful consequences, well-crafted characters, extensive customization, and a gripping storyline. Whether I was role-playing as my noble cleric devoted to Lathander, taking a self-righteous playthrough, or if I was my mischievous drow bard who's destined on a chaotic quest for Minthara's sweet, sweet love, BG3 offered a wildly different playthrough through both. And that is just a small testament to the game's versatility, replay value, and immersive storytelling, echoing the very best of RPGs like Dragon Age. And in a world currently where games like Dragon Age Dreadwolf face very much an uncertain fate, Baldur's Gate 3 is the definitive realization of what we desire in RPGs and even more. And it's exciting to see more studios like Larian embracing BioWare-inspired features, from epic adventures to romance options, character customization to the nth degree, intricate narratives, branching dialogues, and diverse character classes. The future of role-playing games is unfolding irrespective of BioWare's involvement in that, and Larian Studios is leading the charge in shaping that future. Baldur's Gate 3 is undeniably close to perfection, although not without a few flaws. And the biggest flaw revolves around arguably the largest part of the game, Act 3, and the game's actual ending. And that's precisely what I'm delving into today. But first, a word from today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Dungeon Hunter 6, the latest Dungeon Hunter game in the franchise since 2015, and let me tell you, the anticipation was worthwhile. Dungeon Hunter 6 is a free-to-play mobile ARPG with a unique hero collector feature in a stunning fantasy style. The gameplay features a fast-paced hack-and-slash combat style with various builds and skills to utilize as you fight big bosses. And the best part, it is absolutely free to play. Just click the link down below in the description or scan the QR code on screen if you're of course on a PC. Play as a bounty hunter with multiple class options to not only slay big bosses but also make them serve you as you progress. The game also features PvE and PvP gameplay modes, including real-time guild wars and guild raids for multiplayer experiences. Dungeon Hunter 6 is packed with many fun, creative gameplay elements. You can transform into a cat on secret stealth missions, plus there is a customizable mount system that lets you ride fantastical creatures and machines when you meet other players. And so it is time to embark on your Dungeon Hunter 6 adventure today. You can download the game for free on both Android and iOS. Simply use my link in the description or of course scan the QR code on screen. By using my link, you'll receive an exclusive starter pack valued at $50, featuring 10 summoning scrolls, 1 SSR Lieutenant Demonic Wolf, and an accessory pack. Also, don't miss the launch Lucky Spin event starting on October 15th. You can win incredible prizes like the iPhone 15 Pro Max, PS5, Apple Watch, and more. Of course, check in the description down below for all the exciting details on Dungeon Hunter 6. So let's talk about the ending of Baldur's Gate 3. Of course, heavy spoilers ahead. Like I said at the start, BG3 is almost perfect in every way, but it's missing one crucial element: a truly decent, satisfying conclusion. One that reflects resolute endings for the major choices, characters, and key moments that defined our journey. Each choice and consequence beautifully showcased in a variety of epilogue ending sliders. Because as it stands in the current state of BG3, all we're handed is a post-ending credit scene. And it feels a little bit like deja vu from Dragon Age Inquisition, in which Withers pretty much tells the three gods to do one, revealing his true identity as Jurgle, the original god of the dead, and just like that, the game slams its doors on us. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the fact that Withers is confirmed to be Jurgle. That is such a fun plot twist and just adds that extended connection to the original games. However, I don't know about you, but I was left a little bit there scratching my head like, is that all? What else is there to the ending of this game? Like, what about my choices? I poured a whopping like 120 hours into my first playthrough, and all I got was a brief ending scene besides Jurgle with my hero and Shadowheart like strolling off in some sort of cabin, leaving me with a ton of questions. Of course, their future together is certain, but what about everything else? What about the characters, the journey? I mean, come on, from the very moment that my character washed up on the Sword Coast's beach, I was making monumental choices. I saved the Grove, but what happened to the druids afterwards? I didn't manage to cure the Shadowlands in Act 2, and that cost me Halsin, so what has become of him? Bloody Lizelle sacrificed all of her belief system to stand by my side, even given all it cost her. But now, my hero is living a quieter life with Shadowheart. So what is Lizelle up to? Gale met an unfortunate tragic end before his story could find his own closure. What are the repercussions of that? Will is destined to become the next Grand Duke. So now, how's that going to play out? And the list goes on and on, leaving me much with a strange note to end on, especially with like Astarion running away, burning to death, and Karlach literally went out with a bang. And while I do appreciate Shadowheart and my character running off together, because that is exactly what they would have done, I still need some closure for everyone and everything else. Now, in light of my complaints in the past couple of weeks, there has been a lot of buzz online regarding the abundance of data mined and cut content from BG3, partly due to the game's month early release, and some material simply just being cut. A lot of this data mined content ranges from playing as a Shah worshipper to even a potential Minthara pregnancy storyline to an Averna section and so much more. Definitely should check out the Reddit post that I'll link in the description because it's really exciting stuff. But what's most relevant to our discussion today is the discovery of full epilogue cutscenes that varied significantly depending on your in-game choices. And since this data mined content was leaked, Larian Studios have actually acknowledged the cut content discussion, with their response being, one of the reasons why we trimmed the epilogue is because we were afraid the ending cinematics would become too long and would detract from the epicness of the experience. But clearly not everybody agrees with us, so we're going to do something about it. And true to Larian's word, they already have done something about it because we've already witnessed the developers implementing changes to Karlach's ending, which is just fantastic to see that Larian are actually listening to our fan feedback. And so the prospect of them taking that even further is equally exciting. Can we expect future ending epilogue sliders akin to Dragon Age, neatly tying up almost every aspect of your epic journey, summarizing the consequences of your choices? It would certainly grant us the closure we're asking for, and if it's been cut, surely they could add it. It's not like I'm asking for a brand new feature, so can we see those in the future? I'm really hopeful. Alternatively, very much more of a stretch because it would ask for more content. How about we get a story element where, after the Withers epilogue scene, maybe even as a future expansion, DLC, maybe even just more content in the definitive edition of BG3, let's have a scene where we fast forward 6 months into the future, and during this time, you and your companions reunite, similar to a camp setup, maybe even in the city of Baldur's Gate 3 after elements of its reconstruction. And in this section, let's say you have the freedom to explore and engage in conversations with pretty much everybody who survived at the end, catching up on what they've been up to during those 6 months. If you had a romance subplot, you can also delve into how both of you fared during that time. Your responses in these conversations and your quest choices can then influence the ending slides that could appear afterwards. It's another brilliant way to close BG3, tie loose ends, say goodbye to our friends, and give our love interest a kiss before closing that chapter. And dictated by our own dialogue choices, we can also have some kind of element in what our character is doing after those 6 months as well, giving us plenty of different options on how they conclude their journey. Right now, it feels like BG3 puts a huge heavy emphasis on the journey rather than the final destination. And that's wonderful for the immersion and just enjoying the ride that BG3 has to offer. But given just the immense scope of this game, spanning numerous narratives, choices, consequences over dozens and dozens of hours, we do need those conclusive moments at the end that just solidify this story. Also ensuring that we don't forget what happened to those various characters or places during our extensive playthrough, which can easily span up to 100 hours. And I believe epilogue sliders would do just that. Now, continuing on and looking at Act 3, another aspect of BG3 that left me a little bit unsatisfied and a little bit like a missed opportunity is just how the developers shoehorned the upper city into the lower map of Baldur's Gate, and how that consequently had an impact on Act 3 as a whole. You see, Act 3 should naturally have been the grandest act of the game, but it ended up being the largest primarily due to an overwhelming number of activities crammed into the city, yet it didn't feel natural. You see, Act 1 and 2 were all about forging connections, building friendships, and setting out on your epic journey to enter the city of Baldur's Gate. Feels like everything was falling into place. However, by the time that you engage in Act 3, things started to feel a bit like a chore. There was just an overwhelming amount to tackle, which unfortunately led to a loss of reactivity within the game. I genuinely missed the rich companion interactions, the kind that included actual cutscenes and additional responses during dialogue with other NPCs, reminiscent of what we experienced in prior acts. Act 3 was sorely lacking that liveliness. And now, in Community Update 19 posted on June 2nd, there was a mention of exploring the Upper City. This was prior to the announcement of the release date change, indicating that the removal of the Upper City was a very late decision. Now, adding even more to this confusion, director Sven himself discussed the affluent Upper City just 2 weeks before the game's launch, describing it as fully explorable, yet it is conspicuously absent from the final game. Me, Lisa and Lambo talked about this very critique in our recent overall thoughts on BG3. We believe what Act 3 needed was this Upper City element, acting as an Act 3.5 setup for the story. That way you're incorporating more mechanics introduced in Act 3, but you're also having aspects of the storyline split up between the two acts, instead of having everything just shoehorned into the lower city of Baldur's Gate. For instance, you could have Gortash and Orin separated into the Upper City and the Lower City, providing a more harmonious gameplay experience instead of having two antagonists in the same city space. Like, really, why is Gortash in the Lower City? Given his character and the role he plays in the city, you'd highly expect him to be in the Upper City. But no, now again, the Upper City was cut last minute. I could certainly see this area added in a future patch or a definitive edition of BG3, potentially adding more cut content back into the game, because apparently there was a quest line fixing Karlach's engine that did not make its way into the game because it was locked to the Upper City. If we have the Upper City back into the game, could we have quest lines like this added back, ultimately ending in different endings for Karlach, potentially even more happier ones instead of her blowing up, which is what happened to me. Lastly, another thing that just didn't sit right with me in terms of Act 3 was Minsk. It just felt like we didn't have enough time with him. Recruiting him at the very end of the game and then only having like 2 or 3 missions before completing the game was just a bit disappointing. I expected more interactions and development with him. Of course, that is not a flaw on his character. He's fantastic. If anything, I want more of him and I wanted more of his involvement in the story. I just feel like it would have made more sense to have him introduced by Act 2, as is the case with all the other companions, because then you can introduce their character arcs in Act 2 and then develop them even further in Act 3. That way getting more opportunities to delve into his story. And that just didn't happen. I feel like a way to fix that would be having him more integrated with Jaheira in Act 2, and I'd love to see him reworked or refixed into Act 2, but I just feel like that is a bit too much to ask for. Even so, with his late involvement in the story, it makes me wonder how long Act 3 was originally planned to be before the cuts were made, and I do wonder if we're going to see any more of that content restored in the future. It goes without saying that Larian Studios have already proved that they are listening to our feedback, as is the case with Karlach's fixed endings and the continued patches. In reference to these massive aspects with cut content and Act 3 updates, I reckon we could see restored content, add-ons and significant tweets added in a Baldur's Gate 3 definitive edition, akin to what has happened with the previous Divinity games, in which these definitive editions have released a year after launch. It's a brilliant way to implement these crucial fixes and add even more content in a comprehensive package, assuming that much of the groundwork has already been laid out and sorted via patches. It's also a great opportunity for BG3 to launch on the Switch as a full-on final major patched content update, just like they did with Divinity again. Either way, Baldur's Gate 3 is a fantastic game and I'm excited to see future patches and whatever else we get as Larian Studios continue to polish this masterpiece of an RPG. Let me know down below what endings you got for BG3, what tweaks you would like to see be made, and how did it all end for you? Did you have Karlach exploding or did you actually go to Avernus River? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down below and what critiques you have on BG3. Until the next one, I've been Jackdaw and I should go. Whoa.